20 to 100 high net worth individuals that you want to talk to about potentially investing in your syndicate or in your fund, what's the best way to get their attention? Send them a book in the mail, go old school with a note, and then say, hey, let's chat.
Chandler, welcome to the show today.
Michael, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Man, it's great to have you on here, man. I've been following you from a distance for a while. When I published my book in 2018, I was listening to your podcast and downloading some of your tools. I think there may have been an ebook or something that you put out. And I think you said at the time that, writing the book is like the smallest part of it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I thought that's the whole thing,
Yeah.
And I got into it and I'm like, holy moly, there's so much more to it. But the book has been such an amazing way to build our platform, both on and teaching people how to do how to invest in apartments, but also in getting people to invest as well. And I think that's what you're all about is how do you use a book to really grow a platform? That's what we want to talk about here as well. But how did you get started with that? Give us a little background.
Yeah. So I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD who ended up writing and publishing books, which was not the path that I thought I would take. But I wrote a couple of books on life experience. They did pretty well as I was dropping out of school, and I'd ran kind of some other companies, small businesses that led me to drop out of school, and then did the book thing and dropped out and started a business. The business was just totally failing. And then meanwhile, people kept asking, hey, how are you doing this book thing? And
what was the book about? What was the first book about? What did Chandler first write about?
First book was, my brother plays in a Grammy-nominated rock and roll band. It's a pretty big band. And so it was 15 things our parents taught us growing up that we thought were normal. But then we realized when we got out in the real world, no one gets taught this stuff. And it was his perspective as a musician, my perspective as a business guy on these same 15 things. So
how did the book do?
Yeah, it did pretty well. So that book did pretty well. The other book that I published right about the same time did even better, and kind of took off. And then people started asking, hey, how are you doing this? We launched what ultimately became Self-Publishing School and started helping other people do it. And then they started being successful. And then fast forward to today, and I was mentioning right before the interview, we've published about 7,000 books in the last 7.5 years. And Inc. 5000s, Forbes 30, Under 30, all that stuff has kind of come from just staying focused and executing and eating, sleeping, breathing books.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about why books, right? I mean, we're real estate investors, and I found in talking to syndicators that, they think they're in the real estate investing business, which may be true in the first 1 or 2 or 3 deals. But what happens is when you need to scale that, when you need to 10x your capital raising, so you've raised $500,000 and you need to raise $5 million, the only way to do that is to build your marketing platform.
Yes.
And there's different ways to do it. And you have both a podcast and a book. Those are 2 powerful ways of doing it. There's social media, LinkedIn and YouTube and things of that nature. But why do you think a book is so important for entrepreneurs in general who are building and want to scale their business, syndication being one of those businesses? But what do you really like about a book?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I'll just keep going with your example, right? Is you go from your early fundraising to syndication, you got to raise money at scale. Now, how do you raise money at scale? You got to go from you got to bring leverage to what you're doing. Well, I call a book, it's leveraged impact, right? I do the work. I create this book once. This book goes on to talk to and impact thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people. So how do you bring leverage? Well, you go from one to one to one to many in the conversations that you're having. Now, probably as an investor, you have sorry, I'm going a million miles an hour, but I got a lot of thoughts on this. Probably as an investor, you've got a thesis that you're raising money based on. Well, what's the simplest, easiest way to communicate that thesis? Write a book on it. And then potential investors read the book. The root word of authority is author. For a lot of people, you don't become an authority without first becoming an author. And so you become an authority on that topic by writing about your investment thesis or the area that you focus on. And then people, instead of you begging them for money, they'll beg you for money, or they'll beg to give you their money because they say, hey, I kind of don't want to do this myself. Can I give my money to you? I'll give you 2 examples because I've interviewed both of them on my podcast, the Self-Publishing School podcast. You've got Hayden Crabtree, who wrote a book called Skip the Flip. He talked about this. People read his book. They say, hey, I want to invest with you. Same thing with AJ Osborne. I just looked up his book. The Investor's Guide to Growing Wealth in Self-Storage. So he's big in the self-storage arena. He's used that book to grow a massive fund around self-storage, multi-unit, all that stuff. So, I mean, this playbook, it's not new, but it's highly effective.
Yeah, I mean the way what you're doing as well, and what a lot of people are doing is it not only builds your authority but credibility, right? It's the same thing with a podcast. People listen to a podcast for 45 minutes, 60 minutes. It's a long time. Someone reads a book, it might take 4 to 6 hours to read a book. You really get to know a person when you go through that process.
Yeah.
And I think the idea, even here's the thing, and I mean I learned this in the process. You don't typically make millions with books. Okay, I mean,
Right.
some people do. Do. Okay, but from an entrepreneur's perspective, I shouldn't expect to make millions with a book. I mean, right? Is that a fair thing?
Yeah, you probably won't make millions with the book, but you'll make millions from the book.
That's so okay. Well,
Right?
that's what I'm trying to get to talk about, the distinction and what a book does for a business.
Yeah. A lot of people say a book is the new business card. I think a book is better than a business card. Because if you give someone a business card, they're probably going to throw it away within 24 hours. But you give them a book, they're going to hold on to it. And every time they see that book, they think of you, right? And they want to do business with you. So I look specifically, and I was just trying to see if I had it. I don't have it handy. Trying to see if I had Hayden's Skip the Flip book as an example of that, of like, he was on my podcast, sent me that book. And I'm like, I want to get into real estate investing. Let me read that book. And maybe I should do some syndication stuff with Hayden. Right. And so I look at the book, though, as how do you use the book to get more leads, sales, and referrals? So leads, people who haven't heard of you, but who pick up your book and now they know about you. More sales. These are people who know about you, who now choose to do business with you in the real estate context as they're choosing to invest with you. And then referrals, if you already got investors, the simplest, send 2 books to every investor and say, here's one for you. And here's one for someone who's thinking about investing in this area. Well, guess what? They're probably going to re-up with you. Oh, by the way, I've got an extra $100K in cash. Do you have any deals? And they hang out with other people who might invest. And even just if we want to get super practical, if you've got a list of 20 to 100 high net worth individuals that you want to talk to about potentially investing in your syndicate or in your fund, what's the best way to get their attention? Send them a book in the mail, go old school, with a note, and then say, hey, let's chat. Right.
So Chandler, one of the things and to kind of play off what you're talking about a little bit. So Michael, I noticed in kind of the newer books or later books, there's a lot of like resources embedded into the books for people to go to this website. How does someone navigate that? And how do they understand what they should include in that book to kind of to make that go even further?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what you're talking about, I'll explain this, but I also build on this. It's in chapter 16 of my new book. It's using a book to build an email list. And because I talk about how, to get, what you're talking about is how do you get someone to go from reader to subscriber or customer, or in this context, really to investor.
Yeah.
And so I look at that as, okay, most important thing is in the very front of the book. Now, I don't know. I know people listen to this podcast. I don't know if anyone can see the video, but you guys can. And so I'm showing the first couple of pages of my new book published. I give away audiobook and video summary for free. So now they're more likely to consume those 2 things. We're starting a relationship, and I just got all of their contact information, which is worth way more to me than the $3 on the book, right? This is like very micro kind of thing. But if you ever click the look inside button on Amazon, to like preview a book, now all of a sudden, because I have this, I'm just funneling thousands and thousands of people off of Amazon, who some of which don't even buy my book. That's totally fine by me. And because
that's ninja stuff right there, Chandler.
Leads,
that's
I'm either
pretty
getting
cool.
free leads, or I'm getting paid to get leads. And people think Chandler's an idiot. He doesn't even know I can get this audiobook for free. Of course I know that, right? Now, a lot of them will end up going to buy the book. But if not, I've at least just got a free lead that I would have otherwise paid, tens of dollars for, or whatever we're paying for leads these days. But then I look at, okay, how throughout the book can I have 5 to 7 CTAs or calls to action that add value on the thing that I'm specifically teaching or helping with in that chapter. And so that way it's additive to the reader journey. So if they decide not to be a customer, no worries. Chapter whatever 5 or 6, it's like, here's an outline template. It's a 25-page Google Doc pre-formatted, and this is a chapter about how to outline your book. So it's like, it's things that just make it easier to implement. But then also, if someone's really serious, they will they'll opt in. And then last thing is just for your best readers. And I know I saw Hayden do this in his book, and then I do something similar, obviously different market, but the final call to action is, hey, if this was helpful and you want to work with us, book a call, chat with the team. So these are your most qualified people. They just read the whole book. So an example for your guys' industry could be, hey, invest with us. And here's how to do it. Book a call with someone on the team, or whatever that sales funnel or process looks like.
Yeah, this is really important that you guys are listening to this stuff. You don't write a book to make sales per se. It's exactly what Chandler's saying. It's a business card. It generates leads for you. And this is probably the best way to use it is to mail it out to existing or prospective investors, educate them, build trust, and at the end, book a call. Hey, let's get on a call with each other. Giving away something for free in that book is fantastic. In our book, I have a companion course that I copied Pat Flynn, what he did. And it's great. Hey, I'm analyzing this deal, but if you want to see me do it live, well, click here and you get this video, and now that generates leads. I got about
super smart.
Yeah, so
Super
I may
smart.
have copied it from you and or Pat and synthesized the whole thing.
He talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's the mini course concept.
It's the
which
mini
I think
course concept.
It's a little bit advanced for a lot of people, but if you can do it like you've done it, it's very, very smart. It's additive, it's additive, right? It's not like, because I think where sometimes people go wrong is they pull out this thing that should have been in the book.
Yeah.
And then people are pissed. It's like, well, hold up. What do you mean I got to go to your site and do this thing? But your example is, hey, I taught you the framework. If you want to go see me do this click by click or step by step, then it's a show me, which I think that's the you've probably heard Russell Brunson and a bunch of other people talk about the value ladder. There's teach me how to do it, show me how to do it, and do it for me.
Yeah, and that's the perfect call to action. If this seems too much for you, which it probably is, why don't you just hire me and just, this seems like a lot for you to invest yourself. It may or not be for, if you just want to invest, why don't you call us and just invest with us, right? And so now there's a couple objections that come to mind. I mean, everybody wants to be a published author, right? But of course, who really is? Very, very few people. And one of the objections I hear is, there's so many books on real estate investing, or pick any industry, healthcare, whatever it is. So many books in real estate investing. Why in the world would I put out a book? Why should I do it when there's so many other stuff out there?
It goes back, for me, it goes back to leverage. Yes, it's hard and it's competitive, but if two things, why you should do it is because it's going to bring leverage to everything that you do. It's a short-term investment in time and money to create a long-term asset that will continue to bring in leads, customers, and impact for the rest of your life and hopefully long after you're off this earth, right? And then the competition piece, what my recommendation in there is we talk about this as the 4 Ps of a best-selling book: person, pain, promise, price. So get more specific. Yeah, there's a ton of real estate books. There's a ton of books on publishing, right? But how do you get more specific on the person that you're writing to, and write to one person who you actually know, not an avatar, but a person that you actually know, and then write to the pain that they have, that they know that they have. And then what's the promise that you're making with the book? And then there's the price of the book, which is pretty straightforward. But if you do that well, and then, they say the riches are in the niches, and then your book will do very well. Like, just for example, AJ Osborne, going back to him, the Investor's Guide to Growing Wealth in Self-Storage. That's very specific. And no one wakes up and is like, I need to read a self-storage book. But if they're intrigued by this, they might buy the book, they might read the book. And just looking right now, it's 522 ratings and reviews on Amazon.
Nice.
So it's obviously done pretty well.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Another thing I hear sometimes is that it is a lot of work. So let's talk about that. And back to the original point is the writing is really kind of the maybe even the smallest part of the process. But can you just outline in general what the process really is. And let's assume for now that we're self-publishing. Guys, we're talking about the
Yeah.
self-publishing school, okay? And so just maybe outline, and we can kind of drill down a little bit on each part of it, and maybe some nuances here, but just kind of just talk about the scope of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So big picture, we're talking about 8 milestones. I like to make complicated things simple. And so again, I don't think anyone can see this, but if you go to my book published, the Amazon page, this image is there. It looks like a mountain, and it's 8 steps in the process of writing and publishing. So these first 4 steps are what's called the More writing method. It's mind map. More is an acronym: mind map, outline, rough draft, editing, right? And so mind map, outline, rough draft, and we've really got 2 types of editing here. So that's milestones 1 through 5. Then milestone 6, cover design, then formatting the book so that it looks good, and looks like a good quality book, And then number 8 is to launch the book successfully. So big picture, those are the 8 milestones along the journey.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, I'm a pretty busy guy. I don't have time to write a book. Maybe I should hire you or someone else to ghostwrite the book. What do you think of that?
Yeah. So 2 things here. I mean, we've got, I think for, 90% or more of people who hire a ghostwriter, it's just a horrible experience, and they don't write a great book, and it's not in your voice. I would love personally to be able to execute on that business model, because people who charge for ghostwriting, it's 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 100,000 plus. So it's a lot higher ticket to get it done well. And it can be done well, but it's really, 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 really hard. So our kind of stance in the marketplace is let's save you hundreds of hours in the process. Let's save you thousands of dollars in the process. And let's help you write a better book that actually sells copies and grows your business. Now, we don't ghostwrite, but we help people shrink that process where they can write a great book themselves and then work with an editor to make that book better, right? And so that's kind of the stance that we take, and what we believe leads to the best outcome in terms of quality of the book and outcome for the author.
So, Chandler, who is this not for?
Yeah. And are you talking about writing a book or self-publishing?
Yeah, just writing a book. I mean, is it for everyone, or is it not?
It's, New York Times says 81% of people want to do it. We know that less than 1% of people actually do it. And I used to think that not everyone should write a book. And then I had a friend really challenge me on that. And he said, well, what about have you ever wanted to read the book, like a book from your grandpa who's passed away? And I never got to meet him. He died when I was 1 year old. And I said, actually, yes. So in that context, I think everyone should write a book, even if it's just for your kids and your grandkids.
It's like
but as
legacy.
far as, there's legacy, there's business, there's maybe this is a passion project. Like a lot of people fall in one of those buckets. But as far as the business side, like if you're doing it for your business and you're not willing to do it well, don't do it. The world doesn't need more crappy business books. So if you're not willing to really make something quality, I think it's probably not for you. Just do something else. But if you want to actually do a book that's good, you can drop the mic on that topic and then point to it for decades, then I think it's a really, really strong strategic move.
How long does it take, Chandler, typically to go A to Z inside like a program like yours?
Yeah. So our students typically 9 to 18 months is kind of the ballpark. Now, the traditional published route is going to be a lot longer than that, and self-publish on your own, it could take decades if you're not disciplined, but that's typically how long it takes. And our goal is to help someone get a rough draft done in a handful of months. And again, save them hundreds of hours in the process, because time is money. So that's kind of the ballpark.
It took me a while to get it going. It took me a lot longer to start writing than I thought.
Yeah.
And I was writing blog posts before, so I don't have no trouble writing. But for some reason, with a book, I didn't make it a priority. And I would write for like 45 minutes and then not for like 4 days. And I would forget what my train of thought was until I figured out that I need to write 45 minutes every morning. So every morning, it took me like 10 minutes just to get back into it. What did I write about? Then and then I fatigued after like 35 minutes. I was tired. But what are some best practices you've seen to keep people, like you said, disciplined and on track?
I love your process, Michael. I think that's super smart. One thing that we do with some of our authors, I call this the 30-day rough draft challenge. It's kind of modeled after exactly what you were just talking about. Is so it's rough. It's mind map, outline, rough draft, right? So mind map the book at a big picture level, then outline the book at a big picture level, and then write the rough draft one chapter at a time. And to do that, for some people, it's they need that discipline and accountability. So 30 days, write for 30-minute blocks a day. So 30-minute blocks a day. Now do that. This is kind of some new concepts that we're working on. So I'm having to, forgive me, I'm having to look into the actual book to see this. But try that, and then post a daily word count. Just screenshot. We kind of modeled this after 75 hard, which has worked well for a lot of people, losing weight, getting fit, all that stuff, mental toughness. And so do that for 30 days. And even if you just write a few hundred words a day, well, now all of a sudden you've got 15,000, 30,000 words done in 30 days, which is most of the way towards a rough draft of a book.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. One of the things well, before we get to the underestimating part, I knew that I didn't want to do the formatting and the final editing, the formatting and the publishing, right? And that's one thing that you guys do as well. So once the rough draft is done, you guys just make it look good. You get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you agree that that's something that someone should not do themselves. So first of all, it's very time consuming.
Yeah.
and very technical.
Yes, it is. And back in 2018, when you were going through some of our stuff, we did not do that. And we finally recently rolled that out on just request. I mean, we would refer out to it, but then people were like working with a cover designer, a formatter, they need to upload. It's just like this whole thing. So we've started bringing all that stuff in house. Right. Saves people a ton of time, saves people a ton of money. It helps lead to a better outcome with their book. It's kind of like, I look at it as like that final mile of the publishing process. It's like ISBN, book cover, formatting, upload, SEO, book description, categories and keywords, like all of these really technical things that set up your book for success, that if you don't do them, then you will have just wasted a lot of time. We now just do all that stuff for people.
So I agree with you. When you advise syndicators on how to build their platform, we call them platform builders. I agree philosophically with a lot of things you've been saying. First of all, do not outsource the creation of the content, but always outsource the production and distribution of the content, whether it's a YouTube channel or blog or email, things of that nature. Now back to the thing that I did underestimate was the launch of it. So I figured writing it took longer than I thought. I knew I was going to outsource that stuff, but the launch was a significant, it's a significant push, right? The launch itself, and there's this, a launch team, and, because the book publisher, even the traditional ones, don't actually really market the book for you at all. And what are some of your advice on how to launch a book when everything's done, it's on Amazon, and you want to just, what's your methodology there?
Yeah. So in terms of launching, I recommend what I call, there's kind of two types of launches. There's the MVP launch and the traditional launch. So MVP is kind of your minimum viable product. Traditional launch is any traditionally published book, because probably follows a version of that format. And so at the underpinning of both of those is what I call the launch triangle. So the launch triangle, it's kind of the 3 points or 3 keys for success, no matter what type of launch, is creating a launch team, getting reviews, and then doing promotions of your book. So those are kind of like the 3 fundamental elements. A launch team is a small group of people who support your book and your launch. Could be 15 people, 50 people, maybe more. Friends, family members, customers, investors. Then that segues into reviews, because those folks read the book ahead of time and leave a review on day one. So now all of a sudden you've got 50, 15, whatever the number is, reviews right out of the gates. And then that leads into the promotions piece, which that's really the main difference between the MVP launch and the traditional launch, is just how much time, money, and energy do you have to spend on promotions of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you were teaching that back in 2018. I may have copied you off that,
that
launch team.
Yeah, I've gotten better at all the frameworks. I've realized that I need to do a better job of just creating frameworks for all this info.
It's funny because I did hire an editor, and their final copy, the launch team found 17 typos in the book that I put out. 17 typos.
That's very normal.
I couldn't
It's way
believe
more normal
it.
than you think. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. So launch team is absolutely critical. Now I know you keep referring to your book, and it's called Published. And tell us a little bit more about the book and where people can find it.
Yeah. So the book, you can find it on Amazon, or you can grab it, an audiobook. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably like audio content. You can download the audiobook version on Audible. The book is called Published: The Proven Path from Blank Page to 10,000 Copies Sold. And then one thing I'd like to do for this audience is, if you'd like a free physical copy of this book, for the first 50 people, we'll give you a free physical copy of this book. Just go to Published Book. So like I published a book, publishedbook.com/financial freedom. Okay.
Nice.
Publishedbook.com/financial freedom. You go there. International, we'll give you a free digital copy. Domestic, US, we'll actually ship you a copy of the book. You don't have to pay anything. There's no strings attached. Shipping, everything is on me. Just literally just fill out the form and tell me where to send it. So we'll send you a book.
So you guys thinking of writing a book, which you should, get this book from Chandler and find out all about the publishing and what he can do for you working him together. So Chandler, it's been awesome to finally have you on the podcast, man.
Michael, this has been a lot of fun. Garrett, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys both for having me here.